What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. My name is Bladen Kirk, and I'm joined, as always, by the two greatest co-hosts of all time in Matthew Sponhour and Theo Ash. How are you guys today?
I'm great. I need this Tom Brady over in passing yards to hit, though. It's looking good right now.
What's the number we're looking at?
It's over 300. He just needs to hit 300, and last I checked, he's at 232 with a quarter to play.
I don't know if Jalen Hurts maintains possession for an entire quarter. Could ruin your day.
That would make my night a lot nicer if that were to happen.
Well, Matt, I see you're back in Cincinnati.
I am. I'm no longer in South Carolina. But it's
How
good
was
to
your
be
trip?
back with like my whole setup and whatnot.
Did you have a good trip, though?
Yes. I had a wonderful trip.
Great to hear, man. Well, as always, make sure you like, subscribe, leave a review, all those great things, and make sure, of course, you follow us on TikTok at StayHotPod. We're closing in on 100,000. We're at like 73,000, I think. So make sure you drop a follow so we can push to 100K ASAP. Maybe we'll do a giveaway or something. I don't know. I can't confirm nor deny that. But, week 6 is beginning, and there's been some weird NFL news going on, specifically in Vegas with Jon Gruden. Theo, you've talked about this a little bit on TikTok already, and the responses are kind of mixed.
Well, yeah, it's sports, and obviously a lot of the people there are not quite ready to give up their slurs yet. So some people were a little bit, didn't like what I had to say about it. But, overall, I think everyone kind of gets it and understands why he was let go and why what he said was bad. I think most people get that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think the majority of people agree, and it's just when somebody disagrees, that's what you see a bunch of, because that's what a lot of people are going to respond to. So
Yeah,
I kind of think you see a disproportionate amount of people disagreeing.
And really, like the anonymous comment sections on social media is really the last place left to vent about that kind of thing. Like, there's really not many places for people who dissent to hide, which is, I guess, a good thing because it doesn't really have a place in any culture. But he's gone, and from a football standpoint, it always seems to me, and I have no data to back this up, and I probably should have researched this before the podcast. Interim head coaches win their first game every time. I don't have any stats to back it up, but that's how I feel.
All I'm saying, Greg Williams for the Browns was 5-3.
Yeah.
As interim head coach.
Joe Philbin for the Packers after McCarthy was hired won his first game. Dan Campbell, he won his first game. Freddie Kitchens, he was a good interim head coach, wasn't he? That's how he got the job in the first place.
He wasn't. Greg Williams was the interim head coach.
Oh,
Freddie
right.
Kitchens was the interim offensive coordinator.
Oh, right.
And then they, for whatever reason, chose Freddie over Williams.
I didn't hate that hire when it happened because everything got so much better when he became the offensive coordinator. I was like, if it ain't broke. Me and
Bladen were not fans of it when it happened. I was very. We were very.
I don't know,
against it.
I don't remember who I wanted, but I think I might have won. I think I wanted Saleh at the time. I think that was my guy.
I guess that would make sense. It would have been 2000. What year did he have such bad season? I thought it was maybe, I don't know. It doesn't matter.
It would have been the end of 19.
The early returns on interim head coaches always seem to be good. And when I look at this Raiders versus Broncos game, the Broncos were a team I was high on before the season, but and they got off to such a good start, but recently they've kind of fallen off a little bit. And I feel like that trend could kind of continue with this Raiders versus Broncos game. I do think the Raiders are kind of maybe more motivated to
maybe, but the Raiders have also kind of fallen off since their hot start.
That's true. That is true.
It's really a tough spot.
It is. I think that the Broncos defense is still quite good. The secondary hasn't been quite as stellar as I thought it was. And I think maybe Big Ben's sudden prolific day kind of took him by surprise, and they were daring him to beat them down the field. And then he did, which would probably be my strategy as well. So with Carr, I think there's not going to be a whole lot of surprises. Everybody knows that he's kind of dangerous down the field now, I guess, which is an area where he's grown. So maybe the Broncos will win, even though they looked bad against the Steelers because they rushed Bridgewater back from a concussion. And I think Big Ben's effectiveness on the deep ball kind of took him by surprise. But this game could really go either way.
Yes, I think also a lot of times with interim head coaches, it's a move that everybody on the team is waiting for the coach to be fired. Like maybe in the Greg Williams example, Jackson was kind of on his last legs and it didn't work out. And then we switched. It was like, okay, this is not quite that scenario. This is total surprise out of nowhere. So I would bet against any team that is put in that type of situation. I think it's more of like a culture shock for the team rather than something that is coming.
Yeah. I don't know. It's the mindset going into the game is weird. And I can't say I can anticipate exactly how they'll react, but I feel like they'll feel like they have something a little bit extra to play for.
That might be also. It's hard to know exactly.
My biggest concern has to be how this week of practice has been. Right? That's got to be the question. Is like, your coach just got fired. And again, like Matt said, it's not something that was like led up to. It's like, oh, shoot, we have an interim head coach now. And is that going to be a different practice atmosphere? And does that different practice atmosphere affect this week's game? Again, these are things that we don't know, but that's just like, that would be my biggest concern is if this week of practice is not good for the Raiders, that could drastically affect how they play.
Oh yeah, for sure. You practice how you play, and we don't know how they practiced. I would assume they kind of come into this game with a little bit of an extra maybe oomph to them, especially because they've lost, 2 straight now. I think they're going to come out with a lot of fire. I'm going to make my upset picks later this week, and I think the Raiders are a team that I think could pull an upset here over the Broncos. And that's from a kind of a talent standpoint, a mentality standpoint. I don't know. It just always seems like, I know that the circumstances are different, but interim head coaches always seem to win their first game. And maybe I'm totally out of pocket there. That's just
Theo
always
picks
what it
a
feels
game
like
off of pure vibes.
Pure vibes. No data.
Never data.
What other games are you excited for?
Oh man, other games. Here's the thing, right? Am I wrong to say Browns-Cardinals?
No, that's going to be a great game. No. And the Browns are favored by 3 in that game.
I saw that too.
Weird line
and not
to me.
Only that, like when people on like ESPN or NFL Network are doing game picks, most of them have been picking the Browns.
Yeah, I think I'll go with the Cardinals in that game. But I mean, it should be a good game, I guess. I think that will Jadeveon Clowney be back?
That is the question. He is. It doesn't.
He just can't
like
stay healthy to save his life,
and he's been really important to the Browns this year.
No, he is, because without him, not only does he draw a lot of attention to himself, and he's a great player and whatnot, and I think he's a little bit underrated because the sack numbers just never quite equal the impact. There's just some guys like that, and he's one of them. But I think the rest of the defensive line is not that strong outside of Garrett. Without
Clowney is questionable. So.
Okay, he's a big part of their game, and he is so fast off the line. Like even with the Titans when he wasn't putting up sack numbers, I watched a lot of Clowney, and I thought not a lot of bend to him, not a lot of pass rush moves to him, but man, does he get off the line with some power. And working on stunts, and just he beat the Bears inside, just got off the ball and beat him inside like a million times. It's really working out well for I think he's shown a little bit more pass rush moves for the Browns.
I think working with Myles Garrett might help a little bit.
Yeah, so if he plays, that'll be pretty big. Yeah, so if he plays, that'll be big because he's been a bona fide, difference maker for that Browns team so far.
It really has been.
But
I think the big question is, what Baker Mayfield are you going to see?
Right,
because he's been a little
especially
bit up
against.
and down.
especially against a Cardinals defense that has been playing very good football.
Very good football. It's tough. The Browns have actually been very quietly all over the place. Some games, the defense looks not great, like last game. And then some games, I mean, they look really good against the Vikings. And then Baker Mayfield looked really good against the Chargers, but then he looked terrible against the Vikings. So I don't know how to feel about them. I think I'm a little bit lower than everybody else, even though I do like them. But I'd probably favor the Cardinals in this game. They're undefeated.
Yeah,
Gotta respect
it depends.
the record at some point.
Yeah, it depends. If they can get out to the game they want to play and have positive game scripts and they can run the football with Chubb and Hunt and Baker doesn't have to do too much, they'll beat any team in the league. Mm-hmm. And the question will be what Browns defense are you getting? That's the real question. The offense, I think I know what Baker is at this point. I think that he is. I really don't think Baker is this huge mystery anymore. I really do think he's just like kind of that Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill level of, okay, he's fine. He can succeed when the game situation is positive. Baker, the offensive line, the running backs are not some huge mystery. It's the defense that seems to be so back and forth. And the Cardinals offense, they can break you in so many different ways. 3rd and 15, they can break you. 3rd and 1, they're just as like it doesn't matter what the situation is. They've got the guys to convert it.
And those Browns, the Browns have been letting up a lot of big plays. They're kind of prone to that, and Kyler Murray is kind of prone to making big plays.
Yeah.
So that is probably not a fantastic combo.
I wonder,
this is also going to be a really big test for Koromoa.
Yeah, this is what I think. Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's an interesting preview because you need him to be able to handle. You're hoping that he can spy a little bit on Kyler and maybe contain him somewhat because you need to beat the Ravens. And you need to do that against Lamar Jackson.
That's exactly it. If this is that like trial, right? If he goes out and plays well against Kyler, then it's like, oh, this might be our guy to stop Lamar, or at least maybe not stop, but.
Yeah, and I mean, they've got Garrett, who's a hyper-athletic edge guy. Jadeveon Clowney's a hyper-athletic edge guy. And then Owusu-Koramoah is real fast as a linebacker. So if those guys can just stay disciplined and, not leave open rushing lanes and just execute their assignments correctly, they shouldn't have too much of a problem because they are such freak athletes, and they should be able to track him down better than some other teams would, just because of the speed they've got at their edges and their middle linebacker position.
The Browns' rushing defense might be. I'm trying to see how many yards they allow per game, but I know that they are 2nd overall in rushing yards allowed.
So that's bad, like bad 2nd overall.
No, as in good. As in, the Buccaneers have allowed 229 before this game, and the Browns have allowed 378.
And they are playing. Yeah, we'll see. It'll be an interesting game. The safeties have got to recover from their blown assignments last week. I said that I would go investigate, and I think the safeties they played some quarters coverage, and the safety and cornerback transition got botched a couple times, and Mike Williams got left open. So I think it's a problem with the safeties. Again,
there's no way it isn't, especially I looked at PFF and I posted on Twitter. The Browns have the worst safety trio in coverage in the NFL. It's it's bad.
Happens to the best of us.
But coverage grade.
I don't know. Did I say this last episode? I might have already said this, but I think it's interesting that Sendejo was notorious for blowing coverages, and then you get new guys and they're also notorious for blowing coverages. And I wonder if that has to do something with the system that they're playing in.
Browns fans have been adamant about firing Joe Wood for a while now.
I don't know. I don't know about the system. I mean, quarters coverage, defense is defense, they ask you to play cover 2, cover 1. There's some crazy things, but I feel like if you're a safety, and especially if you're blowing a quarters coverage, that's 4 deep safeties. So you only have to take care of a quarter of the field, which should be extra easy for you, instead of if you're playing 2 deep, then you have to do a whole half. So I just think it's miscommunications, and the players just got to execute the play calls better. And I don't know what it is. Maybe in LA, John Johnson benefited from Ramsey and Donald a little bit more than just is getting screwed from.
What's wrong with Denzel and Garrett, man?
I don't know. I don't know what the problem is. I can't pretend to know. But it should be a good game. I think I'll go with the Cardinals, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Browns won.
I'm going to pick the Browns because I'm a Browns fan. and you know, they can win if they play their game. But, man, it has just like last week, this game has me nervous.
Yeah, it's been a brutal schedule for these Browns, and the AFC is stacked. I mean, every team in the AFC seems good or something. They all have like franchise quarterbacks,
except for the Jaguars, which are 0-5.
They've got a franchise quarterback, man. I do like Lawrence,
but this was your team that you thought might be
this is
second in the AFC South, and they are currently 0-5, but they have a very winnable game against Miami.
They do. Tua is coming back, which will be the big story. And again, I think we pretty much know what Tua is too, just with Baker. Like, he's just not a dynamic athlete. He's not a super smart guy. He's just okay, probably below average at this point. We'll see if that's an upgrade over Brissett, because I think it's about the same. But yeah, I guess we'll see.
I don't know. I don't really have a lot of faith in that Dolphins offense.
Yeah, and the Jaguars, this is the game. Their edge rushers were supposed to, Josh Allen and Chase on, they needed to step up, and they have not this year, especially against that bank. That's the game I watched the entire Jaguars game, each play multiple times, and it's like, man, this line just does not get any push. And Austin Jackson is a horrible tackle for the Dolphins. Like, they just have not a horrible offensive line, the Dolphins do. So this will be the game where it's like, man, just come through one time, Jaguars pass rush. You're probably not as good as I thought you were, but they got to come through for this one game. And I feel like if they can get pressure on Tua, Trevor, I think the Jaguars have the quarterback advantage and can win this game. That might be another upset. I don't know.
I love games like this where it's like two really bad teams going at it, because both the fan bases are maybe holding on like a little bit of hope. Maybe not the Jaguars, but the Dolphins or whatever. And it's like, if we lose to these guys, they're both thinking this. We really suck, you know?
Right.
Like, the story will be of whoever loses this game. Not going to be great for them. No, not going to be great for them.
I also kind of get the feeling that Raiders-Broncos, we talked about that, is like a must-win game. Like, whoever loses that game is a fraud.
Whoever loses is a fraud. Whoever loses, that'll be the narrative at least. Whoever loses is a fraud.
And honestly, I think I would buy into that narrative a little bit. Whoever loses Raiders versus Broncos got off to a hot start this season, but is not making the playoffs. Whoever wins, it might also be true of them, but they can at least survive another week. I think whoever loses this is exposed as far as Raiders-Broncos. And I think the Jaguars being 0-5, Urban Meyer being just a horrible train wreck, I think they've already given up a lot of hope. But the Dolphins still have a little bit more because of Tua. But if Tua looks bad against the Jaguars, man, it's not looking good.
Now, here's a big thing for Miami. If Xavier Howard does not play, which he's questionable, and he apparently didn't practice today. So
it's good for my fantasy team because I have Marvin Jones.
It's good for my fantasy team. You know what would be great for my fantasy team? If Myles Gaskin could get the football.
He's a good running back, man. He's got a full package.
So good.
Vision.
He's so good.
Breaks tackles. I like Myles Gaskin a lot.
I just wish they would give him the football. I was right. I took the right guy. They just don't give him the football.
Let's talk a little bit about a game that is going to have major MVP implications. Chargers, Ravens.
The Ravens.
I was a week early on that Lamar Jackson take.
Yeah.
4 episodes or so ago. He kind of by default is the most valuable player to his team.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree.
He's not the best, and the award doesn't really go to like the most valuable. It goes to the best quarterback, like which quarterback puts up the best counting stats on a really good team. But if he gets it done against the Chargers with the banged up team around him, and they move to 5-1, I think he'll be in the lead for the MVP debate. I don't think they will win. I probably am picking the Chargers here because Herbert is on fire. That team just all around looks really good. This is kind of like best case scenario for them right now. It's like everything's working out and clicking, and I like the defense, and I like Mike Williams has finally had the season that I think a lot of people were expecting him to have, and just all sorts of stuff are working out for them. But I mean, how many yards did the Ravens even have the other night that weren't Lamar Jackson? Like 20?
Not many.
Yeah,
and it's just he's been
had over 500 yards.
He's been so efficient passing the ball this year. He's had some picks, but he's been so efficient yards per attempt. And if you just watch, you can see how much pressure he puts on the defense. And if you put another average, if you put like Ryan Tannehill on the Ravens, how good would they be? They'd be like one win right now. They'd be terrible.
Maybe.
And
Maybe.
that's not because Tannehill's a bad quarterback. It's just the value of having a guy who efficiently passes the ball and creates that much defensive pressure. I've probably said the exact same thing a little while ago, but I'll keep saying it. Can't be overrated.
Yeah, Lamar is legitimately everything that was a critique about him last year, throwing distance outside the numbers, can't come back. He's legitimately like fantastic throwing outside the numbers this year and like have led 2 monster comebacks so far. I think he's grown as a passer even this offseason. He was good before. He led the league in touchdowns with a bad supporting cast. So like he was obviously a capable passer before. But this year he's really the best version of himself as a passer maybe that he's ever been. And I actually think they'll beat the Chargers because how many rushing yards did the Browns put up against the Chargers? It was a lot. And like the Cowboys ran the ball against them very effectively. I don't think the Chargers' run defense is very good. And that was one of the areas I was when I called them overrated, and I don't think they're overrated anymore. But I do think that they don't have the personnel to really defend the run super effective. Like Tillery's not good against the run. He's kind of a finesse pass rusher guy. Their linebackers are a little bit questionable. They're the second worst team in the league I'm looking at now in run defense DVOA. They're not good at defending the run.
They've also allowed the most yards and yards per carry.
Yes, they just are not good against the run. And they've been in shootouts because of Herbert, so maybe teams have had to kind of abandon the run a little bit, and they haven't really had the mindset that I'm going to pound the Chargers run defense into the ground. But the Ravens want to do that. So I might bet on the Ravens in this game, but it's going to be a it's just I think the Ravens run defense is really going to work or run offense. But again, this is kind of a toss up.
I'm dying for Bateman to come back.
I am too, man.
I thought he was supposed to this week.
I think he is.
I feel like it's been a couple of weeks where I thought he was going to, and he didn't.
And here's the thing about Bateman. I was so high on him during the draft, but I look around at all the other rookie wide receivers, and they're all good. And I'm like, one of them has got to be bad, right? It's like, are they all really going to be this good? And I kind of feel like Bateman, I'm like a little bit nervous about him because it's like one of these guys has to.
Isn't Waddle hurt though?
Waddle has been, a little bit hurt. Yeah, he's been banged up.
Okay.
But Waddle, when he was healthy, was putting up some nice numbers.
Waddle was looking nice. Smith has obviously looked really good.
Chase, Tony.
Yeah. Oh, Kadarius. Don't even get me started about Kadarius Toney, man.
Yeah.
We talked about him last episode. That dude's a monster.
We did.
But Theo, do you want to talk about Green Bay?
Yeah, it's Packers-Bears week, and no team has violated another like the Packers have violated the Bears over the past decade. We win like every year. It's crazy our record against the Bears, or Rodgers' record against the Bears, and even Favre's. Like the Packers it's like a rivalry between a hammer and a nail. It really is. I've just come to expect these Bears games to be free wins for the Packers. Often in heartbreaking fashion for the Bears, there's been last-second wins to go to the Super Bowl. it's been a pleasure to be a Packers fan playing the Bears over the past 20 years here. So I'm going to pick the Packers. I just cannot ever. They're the more talented team, and they just always beat the Bears. I don't even know what else to say. They just always do. It's one of the great certainties.
It's tough to ask Justin Fields to go out there and outscore a Packers offense in what his third game.
Yeah, the Bears defense is good though.
Looks like the Packers are 19-3 since 2011 against the Bears.
Bad. No, it's not bad. Shout out Robert Quinn on the Bears though. Robert Quinn had a bad season last year, and I'm officially declaring him good again. And like Jalen Johnson is good. They just need to get these.
Robert Quinn ate up against Cleveland.
Explain this to me. I'm just glancing at ESPN, looking at some of the games, and I see Tampa Bay Eagles is going on right now. I must have missed something, but the Eagles, it's 28-14. Eagles score a touchdown, and then they go for 2. 5 minutes left in the game,
and they got it.
Well,
28-22.
I think the idea there is, okay, so they were down 14.
Is the idea that you go for it, and if you get it, then sweet, you can go and win if you score again, and if you don't, you have another shot at getting it, and the analytics just say it's slightly favorable?
Yeah. That is the idea, yes. You are more you are likely to convert one of the 2-point conversions, and you're not likely to beat the money. And you're not likely to beat the Bucs in overtime. That's kind of
kickers have not been hitting their field goals and PATs recently.
Hey, that fantasy league I play in.
If you miss it,
that's right.
That fantasy league I play in where you score, or the kickers only score if they miss, has been awesome. Especially since it's a lot of points. If you miss an extra point, it's 15. You can't bank on it, but it'll completely change games. And it's awesome.
That's crazy. It's almost as bad as Theo's. If you get a pick 6, it's 10,000 points.
That happened in that league the other day. Trayvon Diggs got someone the 10,000 point bonus. I wonder if with all those kickers missing kicks last week, I wondered, is there like some nationwide high pressure weather system that moved through the country, or is there something how did that many kickers miss? And during the Ravens, a lot in
Ohio,
I don't know, that must be it. And in the Thursday night game, there was a ton of kicks that went out of bounds. Why were all the kickers just off?
I think the more kickers, I really think when the extra point was from the 2, it was such a layup that everyone would get it, and it's whatever. And now it's from the 15, and people miss more, and now kickers know that kickers are missing more, and it makes them get in their head just a little bit more, and that makes them miss more, so that makes them get a little bit more in their head, because why is everybody missing extra points? And now it's not a guarantee, and now I have to worry about it. I really think that's it.
It's a mental battle.
All the kickers are connected with each other, via just ESP, and it's when one misses, they all feel it, and it makes them collectively.
The kicker hive mind has been struggling recently.
The kicker hive mind, yes.
But I think it's funny in all sports, over time, you see people improve at trying to play this sport, and they get better and better, except for kickers, apparently. They're doing horrible. They're getting worse.
Especially in the Packers-Bengals game.
Yeah, I always think of the ninja quote whenever a kicker misses. He had that tweet. It was how hard could it be to just kick a ball through the, they're getting paid $1 million. This is the easiest thing in the world. I can't remember the exact verbatim of that tweet, but it's one of the greatest football tweets of all time. He
tweeted something about it the other weekend.
Did it?
When that Packers Bengals, yeah. I think it'd be funny to be in the special teams group, because being a punter and being a kicker is such different vibes. Yeah, there's so much more stress about being a kicker. You have to go out there and score. The whole team is hoping for you to do the right thing. You're a punter. The team's already messed up. And if it gets blocked, it's not your fault. All you got to do is kick the ball straight.
The team's already messed up.
That's awesome.
A bad punt, they're still mad at the offense for having to punt in the first place. And they're oh, great, a bad punt. But they forget about it right after, because they're more mad at the quarterback.
Yeah.
And the punter's got the easiest job in the world.
I can't remember a single time I've been that punter can't play. Not once, ever.
Was it the Brown? There was in the playoffs last year. There was that one punter who was like visibly nervous. I can't remember who it was.
What?
It may have been the Browns punter, but it was like I think they had long
The Browns
hair.
have Scottish Hammer. Come on.
Didn't he mess up something in the Chiefs game?
Week 1. But I just remember one punter was like visibly shaken during a playoff game. And if someone's listening to this podcast and like remembers that, at me on Twitter and tell me who it was, because I remember that being like, this punter's nervous. He does not want to. Like they were getting close to getting him. I think it was the Browns punter versus the Chiefs, but I could be wrong.
I don't think it was. I think I would remember that.
You guys apparently have like the league's worst punter then in my book.
What's the PFF grades for punter? I know they keep them.
Do they?
Yeah,
I don't think they do.
Kickers and punters have
oh
PFF
my gosh,
grades.
they do. I didn't. There's no one here.
You've never checked?
There's no one here.
You got to turn on.
I'm looking at.
No, there's a snap minimum. Turn off snap minimum.
Snap sources.
At the top,
you should make a video on TikTok, make a joke video being like, PFF has their punter grades all wrong.
All right. How dare they?
So the number one punter, according to PFF, is AJ Cole for the Raiders.
Oh, he's that guy. He's
the worst punter.
This is
the
how
worst
you know you
punter.
can't trust
He's a system punter.
The worst punting grade in the NFL, according to PFF, is Andy Lee for Arizona.
He's got to be like 55 years old. How long has Andy Lee been? I thought he retired like 3 years ago. Am I dumb for thinking this? How old is he?
I thought he was good.
He's
Andy
39.
Lee is.
I thought he was good too. I just thought he retired.
He's 39.
I feel like I saw him.
Well, I guess he's washed now. If his PFF grade is the worst in the league, retire, bitch.
All right,
you don't have it anymore.
That's harsh.
The Browns punter Jamie Gillen is ranked 26th.
Oh, he does. It was him.
Yo,
but how does that work? Because a punter punting it like 3 yards shorter than another punter every time kind of doesn't matter as much as if like they then mess up one time and fumble and then it like ruins the whole thing. Or the whole drive for them. Or like the Michael Dixon double punt. That's an all-time great punter play.
Oh, the Packers punter is ranked second.
Let's go. He's new too. I can't even remember his name. We used to have J.K. Scott and he looked like he was 14 years old. He looked like a McPoyle from It's Always.
J.K. Scott, that guy's a baller. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if he's bad.
He's bad.
He does not. There was in the
he's a free agent. I know that he was good in college.
In the 2014
we drafted him way
Ohio
high.
State Alabama game, he killed Ohio State. He got them inside like the 5 or the 10 every goddamn time. It was insane. It is the only game I've ever watched where I'm like, they can't handle this punter. This punter is killing them. I mean, every time.
I know. And the Packers drafted him like in the 5th round, which is pretty high for a punter. And then he just like was mid. I don't know what to tell.
It's
like,
a lot of pressure to draft a punter or a kicker.
It got to him. He can't. These punters.
Hold on.
Now we're just like doing punter trivia.
Yeah, no, I gotta know who the highest drafted.
The Panthers punter is ranked 18th.
So that's not a big deal because most drives end in like a Darnold turnover. So
yeah,
it was that guy, the Jaguars. Oh no, it wasn't the Jaguars guy. It was some dude.
Didn't they took a punter right before Russell Wilson? Didn't
it was in the 3rd round.
Speaking of Russell Wilson,
95-56.
Have we talked about him being out for the next couple weeks?
Not.
I think that's an interesting question. And will Geno Smith and will they suck? Because they have like maybe the worst defense in football, like one of the very worst defenses in football.
And that's the thing. That was the other thing that I got scared about. I got scared about saying that the Seahawks were going to be iffy because their defense. Dude, the defense just is terrible on paper. That roster is not that good. God bless Russell Wilson, but the roster just isn't that good. Especially for a team that spent multiple first-round draft picks plus money on a defensive player.
Yeah, it isn't good. And now they've got Geno Smith at quarterback. It's probably curtains for them. This like even
the scariest part is that they have the 22nd ranked punter according to PFF.
that is scary. They can't. Well, PFF is wrong for that because he double punted, and that punt is. That's
one of those rare plays where you're like, that's like an all-time punter play. That and like the Ray Guy catch,
even though like it got called back.
But. I'm legit. No, it didn't get called. It should have, but it didn't. But anyway, I digress. If Russ, I don't think they can survive 4 weeks of Geno Smith or 5 or 6 or however long this drags out. Their defense got off to a horrible start last year and they were fine. And then the defense kind of pulled it together as the year went along. And then Russ kind of fell apart. But like, I don't know. It's just so bad right now. And it's Jamal Adams is the scapegoat. He's still probably one of the better players on that defense. There's just a lack of talent everywhere.
And that's what happens when you spend multiple first-round draft picks for a player you have to pay. It just does not work. Even when you're right about the player and they're
Khalil
awesome.
Mack.
You could I could make an argument that it's not worth to do that with a high-level quarterback. It just puts you in such a tough position.
Yeah, it really does. And Russ was good this year. He was off to a good start, I guess. He was. And Lockett and DK are both playing like they're amazing, which they are. And
Lockett is so good.
He is so good. He's always open. And the offensive line was a little bit better, I thought, but maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. It just seems like Russ, though, is kind of the Band-Aid that covers up the bad defense like he did last year and what wasn't quite able to do to the same level this year. And with Geno, there's just no chance, right? He
didn't look terrible when he played, but you got the next 5 games, you got Steelers, Saints, Jaguars, Packers, Cardinals.
Tough. Outside of the Jaguars, those are some tough defenses.
If you lose 3 of those games, and it's very possible you could even lose 4, but if you go 2-3, you're going to be sitting at 4-6. You've got some games you can win, but then you're up against it. You're up against the wild card, and you're asking Wilson to like come in and save you every game. And even then, it's like if they're a wild card, what are we doing?
And Wilson playing hero ball is prone to some mistakes too. So like him trying to I don't know. I just don't like it. I missed on them. I thought they'd be very good, and obviously Wilson getting hurt kind of gives me an excuse. But so.
I don't think it's completely dead in the water. You got Steelers. If you can somehow pull out 3 wins in these next 5 games, and you can get Wilson
Steelers
back,
is winnable.
500. I think they can. It's possible to win if you can get back. You'd be 5-5, 7 games to go. Wilson, go get me to 9-10 wins. Maybe we can be a wild card. It's
7 seed.
It's not impossible. But it's just a very losing record, missing the franchise quarterback who is the savior of the team while the defense isn't very good. Not an awesome spot to be in.
No. So I don't know. I don't know what to think of that Steelers team anymore. I thought they were trash, and then they came out and Ben kind of looked good last week. He kind of looked good last week, so maybe he's not totally washed yet. I don't know what to think of the Steelers. I'm just going to kind of lay off them a little bit. That game could go either way. So
I haven't paid a ton of attention to the Steelers, but maybe I'll put my faith in Geno. That might be the move.
Hey, I got to pull out the Geno Smith jersey then.
You do got to pull out the Geno Smith jersey.
I got to pull out the Geno Smith jersey. I'll wear it for
next episode. You're wearing that.
I got you
on the Sunday night. Well, anything else in football, or can we move on to some basketball? NBA, I got it. It's been a long time since we've talked NBA.
You guys take the reins. I'm just going to chill here. If I have anything to say, I will chime in.
All right. We want to talk a little bit about teams and their expectations, and to measure these expectations, we'd figure that we'd use the over-under prop bets. So there's a couple teams that I think people have a pretty good beat on. I don't really disagree with the consensus, but there are some teams that me and Matt probably both think are getting kind of underrated and a little bit overrated, and we're going to talk about some teams that we think are going to surpass their win over under.
I'm looking at it very much as if I was betting. I'm not even saying underrated, overrated. I'm just like, what bets would I make?
All right.
And the number one that I see that I'm like, that's probably good is Pelicans under.
I think the same thing.
It's at 38.5. It was 39.5. But if you're betting the over on the Pelicans, number one, you're betting for Zion to stay healthy. And we did a whole thing about that. I don't trust it. I mean, physical play style. He's big. I don't want to put too much weight into it, but he does look a little heavier than maybe he was at one point. I
saw a promo picture of him this year and his rookie year, and I was like, whoa.
I think that's a little bit misleading.
It was a little bit misleading, but it was a little bit like, yeah.
It's just,
I see what you're saying.
Lower body injuries, and I can tell you right now, he's not playing 82 games. He's already out 2 weeks as of today.
It's tough.
And they're going to reevaluate, and that just seems like a really easy thing to re-injure. And if he's not playing, I mean, you don't trust the Pelicans at all. But even then, so I wouldn't bet the over just because I don't trust Zion to stay healthy. Maybe he does, but I would say that all signs point to him being one of the more injury-prone players in the league, at least as far as stars go, especially for his age.
And I was so high on that duo of Zion and Brandon Ingram. I swear there was a period where I would casually watch some Lakers or Pelicans games, and I would not see like Ingram ever miss. He just would like. His jumper was coming along so nicely. He was like becoming a really nice offensive threat, but the defense and the playmaking especially is just not really progressed for him.
Well, and that leads into some of the other problems with the Pelicans. Last year, they were 22nd in defensive rating, and their defensive personnel is considerably worse, I would say. Steven Adams and Valanciunas is maybe not the end of the world, but I don't think it's an upgrade. Having a great interior defender is very important to having a great defense, and I don't think that they really have. I don't know if I trust a 30-something-year-old Valanciunas as much as I like him to be like that. Zion is obviously not really a plus defender at this point in his career, and it's very tough to ask him to be, even if he is a good defender, because you're asking him to play a very tiring version of basketball on offense, and the more work you ask somebody to do on offense, especially down low, the more tired they are, the less effort they can put in. Plus, he's also, conditioning is a question for him.
Yeah, defense is effort mostly. Yeah.
So, and then I think another big thing. Now, I say a lot that perimeter defense is overrated and how much it matters, but that doesn't mean it doesn't matter. And going from a guy like Lonzo Ball to Devontae Graham on the perimeter is a humongous drop off. I can tell you right now, Devontae Graham can't defend to save his life. And I don't think it's a bad pickup for them. I understand why they did it, and I'll defend it. When he's on the court, the spacing will be significantly better, and that was the goal. But I if you told me this was a bottom 5 defense, I wouldn't be stunned.
Yeah, and like who's bringing the ball up and down the court? Their point guard is something named Alexander Walker. Their backup point guard is Tomas Satoransky. I'm looking at the depth chart in front of me.
He's all right. I think they're a lot of what else the Pelicans have. They have a lot of these young guys.
Yeah.
And if you like the potential of Alexander, or you like the potential of Jackson Hayes, if you like the potential of Lewis Jr., I understand that. But right now, what they have shown so far is that they are not producing at a level that wins you NBA games. They might show flashes and look nice, but a lot of those guys, them like helping the team is more of a projection rather than it is what they were doing last year. And they're young, and that's not their fault, but we're talking about just win totals for next year. You need those guys to improve, and it's no guarantee. And the other thing, I don't like they committed to the spacing, and the spacing is better. Devontae Graham, no Eric Bledsoe. Valanciunas is a better shooter than Steven Adams, even if he isn't, a dead eye or a real stretch 5, I guess. But it's considerably better. But you still got Josh Hart on the team. I still don't think it's like some huge plus. And I'm not a fan of having a role-playing guard who isn't that great of a shooter, even though Hart does some good things. So there's just a lot on that team that could go wrong. They could be good. The offense could be good. Zion could be healthy, and the defense just holding them back. Zion could get hurt. The chemistry there is wonky. A lot of things.
There's no old guy. Team. This is one thing I think is important since the addition of Chris Paul, and his leadership did get overrated. Everything good that the Suns did was like, look at Chris Paul's leadership, carrying them to that fortunate result. It wasn't all, but like I think you do need an old guy and someone who like knows how to win NBA games and someone who has done it for years and years and years. You need old guys and you need young guys. And I look at the Pelicans, and there's some star power there for sure with Zion and Ingram, but the depth is questionable, and there's just no one there that has experience just like leading teams to wins in the NBA.
The playmaking on the team is just brutal.
Right.
It's just, I mean, we'll see what Zion does this year, but I think you'd be asking him to do something significantly different from what he did last year. Valanciunas, I guess you could say, is a little bit of a vet. Satoransky's a little bit of a vet, but yeah, I see where you're coming from with that. What I really think Chris Paul did that made him so underrated as a signing is his playmaking. And I think we're seeing a similar scenario play out with another team that we like the over on, and that's the Miami Heat at 48.5.
I love the Heat, and the more I've been researching this segment all day, and I'm like, is this team better than the Heat? Is this team better than the Heat? And I keep saying no. I think I'm going to pick them to come out of the East, honestly. Like, that team is just completely filled with champions. I mean, Jimmy Butler was the best player on a finals team. They didn't win, but he was the best player on a finals team 2 years ago. Kyle Lowry has recently made a deep finals run. Their coach is their organization just in general, like Spoelstra, like everyone there, just is one of the 4 great organizations in the NBA since the turn of the century, with probably the Warriors, Lakers, Spurs, and Heat, right? Like, just a gold standard organization with guys who just know how to win basketball games, and Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry, and even bringing on like PJ Tucker, right? They signed him this offseason. He just was a valuable piece to a team that won the finals. And then on top of that, their young core is also pretty damn good. Duncan Robinson, one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. Bam Adebayo, one of the best centers in the league, and a really good player under the age of 25. They've got a really good, and Tyler Hero is useful. I think he's got a little bit overrated, but maybe now he's a little bit underrated. He looked a little bit better in the preseason, a little bit stronger. He's a useful player, and now he might have the opportunity to be a 6-man and come off the bench with Kyle Lowry there. Mm-hmm. It's just, and Victor Oladipo is still there, and who knows what he'll give to you at this point. But it's like veteran leadership, good young players, great organization with great head coach. It's if it's in like a must-win situation, it's a close game, there's like 4 minutes left, and you roll out Butler, Lowry, like Robinson, Bam, and just like
possibly
savvy
Tucker or some sort of hero lineup. You got a couple options.
You just have guys that make smart plays. You just have guys that know what to do. And when you look at the East, the Nets are there, obviously, but I am a little bit worried about the Nets. They are so injured, like old, and there is no young talent on the Nets. None. Like, I shouldn't say none, but it's going to be rough, I think, going into getting through an entire 82-game season after kind of a short offseason again. And then the season is even longer. And I don't think Kyrie is, I think he's going to be out for the long haul here. But,
well, to respond to some of that, I think the Heat are very good. I think that team is going to be very good defensively. I think Bam has a very good shot at Depoy. In fact, I picked Anthony Davis, and I might change that to Bam for Depoy because he is fantastic. And that defense overall should be fantastic. You got a lot of guys there. It's easy to forget that a 70-day offseason is a death sentence for a team. That is unreasonable to expect a team to figure it out after that. Just a wonky year. Everyone had a wonky year last year, but the Heat in general. So I'm kind of expecting things to only get better. As far as the Kyle Lowry addition, having a high-level playmaking is just underrated and how important it is. And having a high-level playmaker, like we saw what it did for the Suns, and I'm not saying Kyle Lowry is quite as good as Chris Paul, but he's still very good, and you're right. He's a guy who knows how to win. You have a lot of guys there who have contributed to winning teams, and that's not a coincidence. The spacing is a little worrying. Like, if something were to happen to Duncan Robinson, you'd get very nervous. But I don't think it should be too bad. That was one of my concerns with them.
I don't either. And their coaching is so good. Like Spoelstra is so good that I feel like they can make it work. And everyone's smart. I
think there's a balance between like, we have veterans versus like, we have veterans and that means they're going to get hurt. It's like, it's kind of a yin yang thing. But they have a fair balance. And I would agree that Tyler Hero was not great last year. And I think everybody's expectations of him is to be just a shot creator who really doesn't do it efficiently enough or doesn't scare defenses enough for him to be worth all that much, all that valuable on the court. And maybe that's what he is. But maybe he had a weird off season, and I feel like he's one of those guys where everyone's counting out a little bit, and he can only exceed expectations. So when you have a guy like that, it makes they have a couple of like, or Oladipo, they've got a couple lottery tickets. Like, what if this works out? Then all of a sudden they're awesome. The offense is going to be a little weird, maybe, with Butler and Hero and Lowry, but I think overall they got way better on offense. They're going to be a great defensive team. We saw what the Knicks did as a team that wasn't that great on offense with great defense. They were a 4 seed. So I like the over on the Heat. As far as the Nets go,
48.5 is the over, but just to recap.
I'll take the over on that. I think I have them as like a 3 or a 4 seed. Kind of depends on what happens with the 76ers and then the Ben Simmons stuff. As far as Brooklyn goes, what makes teams win or lose in the playoffs is how many of their star players are healthy. And Brooklyn is going into the season down a guy. Yeah. Off some just, vaccine crap or whatever.
And Kyrie is the type of guy to stage. I think he's holding. I do not think he's playing. I think that everything that he said and that he has done has led up to this kind of moment of martyrdom. And like, I really do think he's, however you feel about it, I think Kyrie is the kind of person to truly be like, I'm not playing then. I will sacrifice all that money to hold out. I do think everything has been leading.
Kyrie is 100% about his narratives and about his drama.
Yeah.
And you've got these problems where like maybe they could trade him, but he's like, the reason why KD went to Brooklyn was to play with Kyrie. And I don't know how that. There's so many questions about how that would work and who would you trade him for, because I don't think a Ben Simmons swap is going to happen.
No,
I don't think KD and Harden want to play with Ben Simmons. That doesn't.
No, I don't either.
That doesn't make much sense. And even then, Ben Simmons is not just going to like all of a sudden just like be the small ball 5 that you want him to be. He's who he is a little bit. But so I think you're looking at that team and you're like, well, they still have Kevin Durant and James Harden, and then they stay healthy. Great. But now you have no room for error. Now, if something happens to one of those guys, and it's not unlikely at all that something happens to one of those guys, you're down to just one dude, and that's probably not enough to overcome a healthy Bucks team or a healthy Heat team who maybe have that room for error. And that's what kills them for me a little bit. And it also doesn't help that like a lot of their depth pieces are like what? Or not even depth. I mean, Blake Griffin, one of the more injury-prone players in the league. Got who else am I thinking? Paul Millsap. I mean, he's what, like 37?
Paul Millsap. They got Aldridge back. He's 35. Patty Mills is there. He's 32. Like James Johnson is there. He's 33. They're so old. And I feel like you just need some young talent. Even if Harden and KD stay healthy, they might come out of the East. But like Claxton is good and he's young. And Bruce Brown was making some nice plays last year too. So it's not like they don't have any young talent, but it's like, I just feel like having a young star in the building is just good for the cult. Like the Suns last year had such, and I feel like they continue to this year, just had such a good balance of coaching and young players and old players, and like their medical staff kept everyone healthy. Like I understand that there was a lot of injuries that led to their finals run, but it was just such a complete team. And I've watched a lot of sports, and I don't know if I've ever seen just a team chemistry like these current Suns have. And I feel like the Nets just can't have that, because it's just all these kind of transplants and old guys that are.
It's not. I get where you're coming from.
It's just a weird dynamic, and usually when you have Kyrie and KD and Harden, it doesn't. The dynamic can be whatever the hell it wants. They're good enough to overcome.
I'll be honest. I'm not worried at all about the dynamic if you have Kevin Durant and James Harden. I'm worried. And my problem isn't like, oh, you need young talent. It's like you need guys to play. And if you're 35, your odds of playing are not as good as if you were 25.
Yes, pretty much, yeah.
So that would be my take on the Nets. If I had to pick a team to come out of the East right now, I think I trust the Bucks to stay healthy a little bit more than some other teams. So I'd roll with them. But
as far as the over-under goes, it's 55.5.
For who? The Bucks,
the Nets. The Nets.
I'm not betting on any team where you're like, well, if I told you Kevin Durant and Harden were going to stay healthy, you'd be like, oh, I'd like that over. If I told you they got hurt, you wouldn't. I'm not just going to like bet on injuries. And I think that's the story of that team basically is how much are KD and Harden going to play. I feel the same way about the Lakers. Their under over is 36 or 56. Yeah, it totally comes down to how much they try in the regular season. Like how much are these teams going to try? I have no idea. They shouldn't try too much, but they could still rack up wins. You're not even judging how good they are as a team. You're judging how much they're going to try and how much they're going to,
be healthy.
Not be healthy.
Care. I don't know.
It's load manage.
Load manage.
Yeah, load manage.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way about the Lakers as the Nets. I feel like they might be a little bit more likely to come out of the West just because they're not down a guy, I
don't know. I feel where you're coming from with that. You want to talk about chemistry. Dude, the team can't shoot. God bless them. I'm like a Lakers supporter. I really am. I usually don't say negative things about the Lakers. But what kills me is like there's good lineups in here, but they signed a bunch of guys who you're like, he's not going to play too much, right? You guys aren't seriously like DeAndre Jordan. It's like, he's not going to play, right? You guys aren't going to do that, right?
Their centers are so Marc Gasol, Howard, and DeAndre Jordan. It's like, is this 2014?
Gasol's not on the roster anymore.
What? Oh, that's right.
And that's not. Anyway. It's honestly not good because he could at least shoot a little bit. I thought Gasol got a bad rap last year. Let me say, look, he's like 40, 45, 50, like my dad's age, but he was not terrible.
No, he
was just a little slow. It's just like Dwight Howard is a good backup big, really strong, but not when your team has spacing problems.
Yeah.
DeAndre Jordan is a backup big is like whatever, but not when your team has spacing problems. Taylor Horton-Tucker, he's hurt right now, but you want him to get some minutes, I'm assuming, after they gave him that contract. So far, he's not been great from three. Obviously,
who's the best shooter on the Lakers right now?
The best shooter on the Lakers right now?
LeBron, probably.
Probably Melo.
Yeah.
Off just straight numbers, Malik Monk shot 40%. I'm trying to think.
It's LeBron. It's LeBron after he looks at his hand and then shoots it. That's the best shooter.
And then you've got Rondo and Anthony Davis shot 26% from three. So I'm like, there's a lot of lineups where you're just going to be terrible spacing, or you need guys to shoot way better. And we're talking about like, oh, Anthony Davis is going to play the 5 more. Great. What are we doing with DeAndre Jordan and Dwight Howard then? What lineups are we going to roll out there? I mean, a lot of this is. I'm just not sure. There's some guys I like, don't get me wrong. For as many signings where I'm like, what are we doing here? There's Kendrick Nunn and Malik Monk, who I'm really high on. And I think that this team is obviously going to be a big player in the buyout market and whatnot. And Melo is a good shooter. And there are good lineups in here. And maybe it's just a thing where the Lakers are kind of throwing everything at the wall. And then if there's a guy who doesn't fit well, we just won't play him. Because we're paying all these guys a minimum. And that works great. And I do believe in the Lakers. And I do believe you go talent over everything and you figure out the fit later. And maybe that's what the Lakers are doing. But there's just a few too many guys who can't shoot. And the Lakers need to weed that out and figure out some solid lineups.
Yeah, right.
That would be my major concern for them. They can shoot, but there's a lot of lineups where they won't be able to shoot. I shouldn't say they can't shoot. They can, but there's just a lot of lineups that scare me.
Well, we've gone in depth about the teams that everyone always talks about, the Nets and the Lakers. And I would say a final between the two of them is probably just less likely than the odds would say, not to take the over-under. There's a couple more teams that I'll quickly hit on. I kind of like the Rockets. I do. I kind of like their young core. I was really high on Jalen Green. I think that he is just a special prospect. For them, it is 25.5 wins.
Yeah.
And I look at Jalen Green and Wood and
Christian Wood needs to play.
Yeah, if he plays, he is a baller. And John Wall, when you look at the contract, he's a massive negative. But when he's on the court and you don't think about how much he's getting paid, like if he's healthy, he's an okay point guard.
Is John Wall gonna what is the deal with that? Is John Wall playing? They've got one too many guys on that team. I see they're working on a trade. I don't know if I think that John Wall minutes for the Rockets are kind of just like a little bit of a waste of time. It's like it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't do anything for anybody. Not that Wall is like a completely like bad player. It's just like he's a vet on a team that's not even really trying to win, taking minutes and shots away from guys who you probably care more about getting shots and minutes.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And frankly, I think they might be better off. I also don't think Wall is as great as the straight numbers said for him last year. I think his efficiency is pretty rough.
It might be. I just know that I don't know. Kevin Porter Jr. was kind of a nice surprise last year, and I think Wood and Thies and I don't know. Not Thies. Tyus. I can't pronounce his name. This is when I'm exposed as a casual and I look at Daniel Tyus. But I do like some of the young players on the Rockets, and I feel like they will be not quite at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to the record this year. So I kind of like. I can see them getting some wins.
I do like a lot of things about them. I do. I mean, I like Jalen Green. I think that Kevin Porter Jr. You're projecting a little bit because he did not shoot well last year. He's one of those guys where. Good examples, Jordan Poole, Darius Garland, first year. I know it's not Kevin Porter Jr.'s first year, but early on in their career, you see them put up, some of the worst like advanced stats and terrible numbers, and they're horrible on the court because they just can't hit any shots. But you can tell it's not that they can't get open. It's not that they can't create. It's just that the shots aren't falling yet. And you're hoping that with Kevin Porter Jr., and you've seen a lot from him that would make you think he could, that the shots just start falling more consistently and the efficiency gets better. It's kind of the same thing you're looking for in Cam Reddish too. But I think that's a totally reasonable thing. I think they can hit the over.
Yeah, they've definitely got a lot of potential. I feel like it could be a total disaster like it was last year, and they lost what? They went on a ridiculous losing streak last year that I know. But I like all their young players decently enough that I feel like they could have a good young core there. And then one more team that I'll talk about is the Mavericks under. I do not like the Mavericks. They were kind of a low seed in the playoffs last year, and I think downgraded significantly with their head coach and didn't really fix any of the problems that were exposed last year, and that pretty much being Kristaps Porzingis. What are they at? They're at 48.5. So they've pretty much got to be like a 50-win team, 49-50-win team. I don't see it. I really don't. Luka's a phenomenal player and all, but I just think it's kind of with their personalities and kids' personality and just the overall lack of attention that the roster got. I just
There's
don't
a
like
lot
the
of question
direction
marks
that they're
on
headed.
that squad.
Yeah.
One more thing I'll highlight. If I had to pick another team, Denver over.
Yeah.
Jokic is that good.
Yeah.
And
great coach.
I know Murray's out. I think Michael Porter Jr. will take a bigger role. And it hurts, but it's not the end of the world. We saw last year, even after Murray went out, the team's record was like about the same. And that's not to say that Murray has no impact, because just like before and after record comparisons are not a good way to judge a player's value. I do think that Jokic is just like he's too good at running an offense.
Yeah.
For the team to just be bad. And you've got the Clippers in the same boat where they're missing Kawhi. So it's like, I don't know. I think they can get to 49?
Yeah. They won a playoff series without Murray. They were 13-5 without Murray.
I trust Jokic. It might be taxing on him to do that much on offense. So you need Porter Jr. to really step up.
Yeah. One more team, the Bulls. I love the Bulls.
And it's that was our main one. That
was our main one, and it's more interesting than our fantasy football league. So I think that we could spend a little bit of time on this. But I do love the way the Bulls are built, and it's a little bit like the Heat, where it's a good mix of vets and young players. It's just a solid mix of guys who are exciting and maybe even haven't reached their full potential yet, and guys who know how to win and have been good for a long time. And I think Levine is a really good young guard. And I look at guys like Trae Young and guys like Booker this year, who were kind of had this bad reputation as losers. But then when the team around them got better and they got some good vets around them, all of a sudden now they're huge contributors to deep playoff runs. I feel like that's the kind of player that Levine can be this year. And it's just like Patrick Williams, I think, is a good bench piece. He's pretty good at defense. I know he's kind of viewed as a bust when they took him, but he had a really pleasantly surprising rookie year. I just like the way that team is constructed with a good mix of exciting young talent and, the savvy vets that can, complement each other in a good way.
So what I would say for them is, I know the concern among people I've talked to is that, okay, but how good is their defense? It's not as bad as you think it would be. I am a big believer, and you need to have like a good interior big defensively.
When we were in Vegas, Matt went on the biggest rant on Karl Anthony Towns that I've ever heard in my life.
I hate that I've branded myself as such a cat hater because he's so fun to watch, but interior defense matters.
That did
happen.
Is getting better. He is getting better.
It did happen.
Regardless. Vucevic does scare me a little bit, but here's the thing. Their defense wasn't that bad last year. That team had Lauri Markkanen and then Vucevic for half the season, and they were 11th in defensive rating. And that's nuts, in my opinion. They're just schemed well, from what I can tell a little bit. And now that you look at the personnel, it's like you added Caruso, good defender. Lonzo Ball, good defender. No more Lauri Markkanen, who is a rough defender. And that probably paves the way for more Pat Williams minutes. Pat Williams starting. That's good for the defense too.
Yep.
And then I think the other big thing is on offense. Now you have a high level playmaker. You have a couple guys who are you added a couple really nice playmakers.
Yeah. Levine can score from anywhere.
Levine can score from anywhere.
It's so nice to have.
Vucevic, the DeRozan spacing, little bit concerning, but it's okay because you got Vucevic out there and he can really shoot. And Vucevic can go get a bucket. DeRozan can go get a bucket. So you're going to have like four guys out there who can create offense on their own. And what that does is it means that as a group, each individual guy has to put in less effort than they maybe normally would on offense. And that saves their energy and they can play tougher defense. You remember how bad Jokic was struggling on defense in some of those series because he's trying to do everything on offense. The Bulls are going to have the opposite of that problem. Plus, I mean, they are a very talented team. So the line is like 42 or something ridiculous, right?
It is 43.5. So they'd need 44 wins.
I like that. I like a lot about them. I know it's easy to hear that opinion and be like, oh, it's because they've won 3-0 in preseason. It's not just that. I think it's a very good team.
I do too. And it's always good to, it's there again. I know it was a long time ago, but historically successful organization. I do think it matters. Like just I don't know. There's some teams that are just in the mud. They just are, and they always suck. And the Bulls are I know it has been a long, long time since they've been. I guess Derrick Rose, it was kind of nice, but it's just the fact that it's the Bulls makes me feel a little bit more confident. I don't know why. It just feels right that they're got to be good one of these years because it's the Chicago Bulls.
But I think.
Do you guys have anything else to?
I was just gonna say, if the Bulls do have a good defense, like I think they might. I might do like a deep dive on why their defense is good despite having an interior defender who you don't trust that much.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's any more that particularly stick out to me as crazy. I like the Suns over. I think the Suns they won about 51 games last year. I can't remember the exact number. And now it's a full 82 game season this year, right?
Yes.
Yes. So now they get 10 more games to surpass it, and they're pretty much the same team. So like, I kind of think that they'll hit their over. I kind of like the Timberwolves over. I think their coach was really holding them back. And they always look so good on paper, and I keep getting burned by them. And you should never bet on Minnesota sports, but I do think the Timberwolves are a little bit.
I've been reminded to never bet on Minnesota sports.
I would agree. I like Minnesota if they stay healthy.
Yeah, I think their old coach Saunders got the job because he was Flip Saunders' son, and that was about it. He was not
Anthony Edwards rules,
and he Anthony Edwards.
Now that the Rookie of the Year race is over,
now we can say it.
Awesome.
So, and the Clippers under. That's the one other thing. I don't like the Clippers, but that's a story for another day because we got to wrap this up.
Yeah, the only thing I will start paying attention to basketball if one of three things happens. If either De'Aaron Fox is in the MVP conversation, if the Kings are good, which
that's
1 and 2
pretty
kind
much
of
the first
coincide, or if the Cavs are good.
Bladen, what you should do is you got it. Yeah, none of those things are going to happen. What you should do, Bladen, is you should bet on basketball, these over-unders, and then you are invested in your money. So you just got to bet a shit ton of money on teams you don't care about, and then you will look on how they're doing, and you'll become a basketball fan.
That's kind of like a good idea. De'Aaron Fox is a baller, but I don't know if he's on a good
I'm not 21, first of all.
MVP, man.
Well, you could Venmo me, and I would bet on it, and then actually, I probably can't talk about this stuff, but anyway. Speaking of betting,
not going to do that.
Speaking of betting, Tom Brady ended with 297 yards tonight, and I needed 3 more from him. It is very sad.
I wanted to bring up that the Eagles scored, right? They got the 2-point conversion, and then the Buccaneers just held the ball for like 5.5 minutes.
That's what I would have done.
Yeah, good idea.
Well, no, I'm just saying, it was almost 6 whole minutes.
That's probably
5
not
minutes,
what the
54
Eagles
seconds
to happen at all.
What were they doing? Were they running it? Just Fournette couldn't stop.
Probably
Fournette.
passing.
12 plays, 67 yards, mostly runs.
Baller.
And
Eagles stink.
That reminds me of when the Browns were up 42-41 and could not just
they beat the Falcons and the
Panthers.
This is tough.
It is tough. Eagles fans complain we don't talk about the Eagles enough. Trust me, you don't want us to. Hurts. This was a really rough game from Hurts tonight, and he was getting booed at his own stadium, and his accuracy was kind of all over the place. And a couple more games like this.
I want Jalen Hurts to be good so bad.
I do too, but another game like this. You might see Minshew. You really might. It's just a tough situation with him. Miles Sanders got 1 yard or 1 carry.
That's the other thing. I told you guys so. I told you guys, and you talked me out of it. I told you guys so. They just don't give him the ball.
You did. They did.
He's on my dynasty team. He's on my dynasty team.
Oh, yeah.
That's why because that was my. He's talented. He's good. Everything. It does not matter. They will not give him the ball.
POV.
They won't.
Your name is Miles
They don't
Gaskin.
do it. It doesn't make any sense.
Must be a Miles thing. Well, playing the Buck, people have just stopped running on the Buccaneers. They just don't do it. The Buccaneers are projected to give up the fewest rushing. They're projected to give up the fewest rushing yards in the history of the league with the 17th game. It doesn't even matter. Yeah. And Vita Vea, this was a take that I had when I did a player review on him last year. I said, after Aaron Donald, there's no one else I'd rather have. And then he was hurt for the whole year, and I kind of put Buckner and Chris Jones above him when I made my top 100 ranking. And that was a mistake. I should have held steady because after Donald, he is the best defensive tackle and by far the best pure nose tackle in the league today. He's ridiculously
dude just gobbles up blockers for breakfast.
He just eats them. He literally engulfs them. He's huge.
Insane.
Yeah, I just looked at it, and Miles Sanders getting 10 carries a game. Or not 10 carries, 10 touches a game. And it's he's a good player. God bless him. He's a good player.
Not good for your fantasy team.
He's killing
your
me.
Fantasy team. Yeah.
Speaking of our fantasy team, are you guys all? Are we all 1-4?
Yeah,
I'm 2-3, bitch. I'm 2-3. I'm right. I was projected to win by I had an 85% chance to win, and Chris Long was 1-4. I'm like, Chris Long is not checking this league. He doesn't care about this league anymore. But he did check, and now he made some good. He picked up Khalil Herbert, who's going to start. and now it's a 50-50 chance. And I think
I'm not quite invested enough to be first guy on the free agency stuff, and that's killing me. I'm 8th and scored points right now in a 14-team league, 1-4. That's a little bit of bad luck. I was like 3rd in points scored last week, and I lost.
Hell. I picked up Kadarius Toney in the free agency this week, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, I got him off waivers.
Well, and you have 2 tight ends. Give me one.
Gronk is so funny. Gronk, like he has had this, like, I don't know what he has, like cracked ribs. There's probably a rib sticking through his stomach after the injury he sustained. And he came back into that game. It was hilarious. And I think he like caught some passes with an injury that has now kept him out like the next 3 weeks. I don't know what the medical staff was doing, letting him back in that game. But anyway, that's probably about it for this episode. We got to talk about the Stay Hot Shoutout, which got us banned from TikTok for a little bit, but so we got to say it here.
All it is what we did on Sunday, which is we have listeners call into the show like we normally do for our Stay Hotline. And what you do is you provide a thought or a take throughout Sunday. So like, I'm a Browns fan. If I'm watching the Browns and they're doing something bad, I'm calling the Stay Hotline and I'm just going off for 20 seconds. If you go over 20 seconds,
we're cutting. You can swear. It's allowed.
Say whatever you want. Say whatever
well, not whatever you want. No. Not whatever you want. Do not Jon Gruden this hotline.
If you say slurs, we will block your number.
Yes,
I promise.
None of that. But come in, give a rant for about 20 seconds, and if it's entertaining enough, we'll put it on the show, and you'll be featured at the end.
And the number is, because people asked, we didn't give it last time, 614-349-8050. I can't post it on TikTok. Every time I post it on TikTok, it gets taken down.
We'll post it on Twitter.
We'll post it on Twitter so you guys can check it out there. One last thing before we head out. My fantasy team isn't that bad. I have had
You've allowed like you're playing defense.
No, I've had the second hardest schedule thus far. The only person who has had a harder schedule than me is Chris Long.
Very sad.
Life isn't fair.
Well, there's still time to turn it around for all of us. We're like, it's our league and we're all at the bottom of the standings, but
yeah, Theo's 11, Matt's 12, I'm 13.
It's all luck.
Like,
it's tough.
If you're good at fantasy football, no, you're not.
Anyway,
this is the worst. But
why don't you bring us on home, Bladen?
Yeah, I'm going to bring us on home. As always, thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you stay tuned for all the great content coming your way on all platforms. We're going to be back recording Sunday night, releasing Monday for a recap of all of Sunday's games. Until next time, everybody, we'll catch you on the flippity flop.